show through. So things that are pretty almost anywhere, like this purple fountain grass, you put that out in full sun and it just gets more and more and more striking all the time. And people say, well, why should I plant a grass when I can have all these flowering things? Well, take something, you know, put that purple foliage at the base of this bright yellow Esperanza. Plant some of that purple foliage and put some new gold lantana in front of it. The colorful foliages really do make the flower color stand out even more. So don't think that you only should have flowers in a colorful landscape. Some of the pretty foliages really help. Yes, ma'am?
If you want to keep like some of the ornamental grasses in a pot, is it better to have them in plastic or in clay or
That's a really good question. And in general, I say it makes no difference. But in the bright, hot sun, it does make a difference for two reasons. Anything that's black holds heat. And if you go out and you were to check the temperature of the soil inside a black container as opposed to, you know, a different color container, the soil's going to be a lot hotter in that. So black plastic pots I probably would avoid out in the sun. White is not as stable. It becomes more brittle in the sunlight. Would not be a problem. Terracotta color is somewhere in the middle. Now, actual terracotta unglazed, I mean fired but unglazed clay pots, they can sometimes help in a really hot sunny area because of the principle that we call evaporative cooling. If you've ever lived in a part of the country where you had the old swamp coolers that, you know, really on a humid day they do nothing, on a low humidity day they really do cool the air. But it's just through the process of evaporation, the air is cooled. When the water evaporates, it takes heat in the process to do that, and the air gets cooler. With a clay pot, you've got water moving through the side constantly, evaporating off the surface, which cools the pot. And so the soil in a black plastic pot is going to be higher than, you know, the ambient temperature. In a clay pot, it's going to be lower than the ambient temperature because it's cooling constantly through this evaporative cooling. If you're going to put a hanging basket out, that's why these sphagnum moss hanging baskets will grow things. If you're trying to grow ivy geraniums, which like it a little cooler, or heaven forbid, trying to grow fuchsias all the way through the summer or something like that, always put them in a sphagnum moss basket because the soil in a sphagnum basket is going to be 10 or 15 degrees cooler than any plastic basket because of that constant evaporative cooling. So, in a sunny area for containers, I would go with light colored containers wherever possible. And clay, terracotta clay, is going to be a little bit cooler because of that evaporation off the surface. Now, when all that water evaporates off the surface, it leaves a lot of minerals behind. You're going to have a lot more chalky buildup, you know, on the pots and things. So there are pluses and minuses to it. If you want nice, clean, beautiful pots, no, don't do it. Or use glazed pots. The glazed pots, like all this Vietnamese and China ceramic that we bring in, that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. The side walls are so thick that even on the dark colors, it doesn't really influence the soil temperature. They're glazed, so they stand up better and last longer, but you don't get the evaporative cooling benefit. So it's a great question, and I would choose the kind of pot, you know, accordingly. If you're just looking for something cheap to grow things in, and the pot doesn't really matter what it looks like, take the black pots and paint them white. You know, it's not the material that makes the difference, it's the color.
Bob?
Yes?
I picked up some short turf, native turf mix from Douglas King Seeds. Now, the place where I'm going to put it, I have mulch down because I just didn't want bare earth sitting there. It's full sun most of the day. Do I need to pull that mulch off before I put the seed down? Can I just, what should I do? What kind of product should I use when I put that in?
If your mulch looks more like compost than mulch, it's probably okay. And if it's a real thin layer, it'd be okay to overseed the top of it. But if you got a thick layer of mulch, you're going to need to put
it on about an inch of living mulch.
And living mulch, I probably just put seed on top of it.
Okay.
Now, planting seed this time of the year, you're going to have to work to keep it moist.
Yeah,
and you may have to water it 4 times a day for 2 minutes at a time to get the seed to germinate and grow.
I've got soaker hoses already staked out with the landscape staples in that area because I knew I was going to have to keep it moist. Should I use like liquid seaweed or anything like that over it?
It certainly won't hurt anything, but I don't think the soaker hose is going to keep it moist enough. I think for the initial getting it started phase, you need to put out one of those sprinklers, one of the impact type sprinklers, because the soaker hose is not going to spray up above the ground. Your seed's going to be pretty much on the surface, and it's not going to get much moisture from the ground up. It's going to get the moisture from the
More
top
like
down.
in a greenhouse with the drip system, that kind of thing? I need to just drench it from above?
I drench it from above.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad I have rain barrels in it.
Yeah.
I won't get no tickets from the rain police.
There you go. Died too, that helps. I didn't say that. The other thing about mulch is, I had a call this morning. Apparently one of the HEBs around is promoting a recycled tire mulch, which is literally ground up tires. I am all for recycling. I think they're fine things to do with old tires, but I don't recommend that kind of mulch just for that reason. It's black, it's going to absorb a huge amount of heat, and you're going to find it's just going to keep things way, way, way too hot. Send it back up to Akron or wherever it came from. It'd be a good mulch and give those people their stuff back again. Okay, other outstanding plants for sunny areas, and I'm just kind of skip around because there are so many good ones. People that, you know, fight deer. This is a little plant that everybody should know about. It's called Damianita, and that's its easy name. Its botanical name is Chrysactinia. But if you're not familiar with this plant, I think I'll pass this one around. Rub the leaf and smell. It's just one of the most aromatic, well, define an herb for me. But
The book's this thick.
yeah, this plant grows all over my ranch in the middle of Jeep roads. I mean, zero soil, pure hard-packed caliche. Stays green, grows year-round. The deer don't touch it, and it has beautiful yellow flowers on it through most of the growing season.
How tall?
No more than 18 inches. If you're looking for what I think is probably the toughest and hardiest plant in the world, I think this stuff's tougher than cactus. And it's a real good plant to know about, and the deer don't eat it. So, Damianita is a good plant. This plant should be a staple of any sunny landscape. The so-called Salvia gregii comes in a bunch of different colors. Hummingbirds love it. Deer don't eat it. It blooms. If you water it and feed it, it blooms almost all the time. It's kind of like lantana. Maybe I ought to talk about both of these things at one time. These are among the greatest drought-tolerant plants in the world. But if you want them to be pretty and flowering, water them and fertilize them. If you just plant them out, get them established, and forget about them, they will live. But they're going to be green plants. If you want them to flower and bloom, water them and feed them, and both of these things will stay in bloom probably 10 months out of the year. And those are, again, two of just your very, very best plants, you know, for a real sunny area. What's that?
How tall were those two?
It all depends on the variety. The pink, the white, the apricot, the purplish colored on the Salvia gregii are very upright, and they'll get to be 18 to 24 inches tall. The red form flops all over the place, and it's pretty, it's bright colored. The hummingbirds love it, but dig it up and replace it about every 3 years because it just sprawls out and it's just hard to make it pretty again. It looks like a weed, but you know, in 4-inch pots at least, you can buy 2 4-inch pots for the cost of 1 drink. So if it lives for 2 or 3 years and it's pretty, pull it up and plant some fresh. It's not like the end of the world. Yes, sir?
Is that the same thing they call skullcap, or is
No.
that another plant?
No, skullcap is another low-growing plant, Scutellaria. Again, we couldn't bring everything in here. Skullcap's out here. Now, skullcap's an interesting plant. There is a white form and a pink form that both love the sun. Then there's a magenta-colored one that's more of a shade-loving plant. So don't just ask for skullcap. If you got a real sunny landscape, be sure that you specify either the white or the pink. I have a bed going up my driveway that's in almost full sun. In the center of it, I planted with the pink gregii. The lower edges of it, I planted with the skullcap, and it grows and spills over the stone wall. Outstanding combination. I finally watered it, maybe a few weeks ago. It's probably been 4 or 5 months since I'd watered it, and it was just blooming beautifully, but it looked a little thirsty, so after 4 or 5 months. What's that?
Hummingbirds love it.
Oh, hummingbirds do love it, very much so, yes.
Is that the red one, because I had the red and it's flopping and it's tall, and I should not have planted where I did, but rather than dig it all up, cutting that back.
It'll come out, it'll be pretty, and then it'll flop over again. Cutting it back does not solve the problem. It perpetuates the problem, so to speak. So at some point, you're going to need to replace it. Okay, other...
Excuse me, can I,
Yes.
that plant you're passing around, is that similar to the Copper Canyon daisy?
No, no, it's not at all.
Because it has a scent like that, and I had deer in my yard, and I planted some, and They're not coming back, not even a flower.
Nothing with any sense eats Copper Canyon daisy. Nothing with any sense walks through Copper
what I'm
Canyon
talking
daisy. Because the year we built this greenhouse complex up here, we had a bed of it planted out front, and if anybody remembers that August, it was like 114 degrees or things like that. I walked through it in shorts several times.